All right. Is this on?
Sibilance, testing.
Okay. Do people, yeah, there it is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order Planning Commission for Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. We're starting a little bit late due to technical difficulties. It is 7:08. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So I make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Then we have the minutes from May 13th, 2025. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Does anyone have in the public anything to comment on related to items not on the agenda today? Okay, yeah. Not on the agenda. So today we're going to talk about a couple things later. All right. So seeing no one, I'm going to ask for reports from commissions, boards, committees, and staff. I'll go ahead and start with you, Commissioner.
I don't think the Parking and Transportation or the Climate Advisory Group have met since our last PC meeting, so nothing to report there. And I don't think anything from council that Planning Commission doesn't already know.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Brackett.
Yeah, the Environmental Commission discussed goals for 2026, and our three major ones were centered around solar, another landfill flare to burn off methane, which is better for the environment than the CO2 produced is better than the methane that normally comes out of it. And then the third was doing a collective waste day for electronic and hazardous waste, things like that, which are otherwise hard to put out there.
Great. Thank you. And then, okay.
Yeah, so there was a meeting of the Environmental Action Committee last week, sort of a special meeting. It was to discuss the metrics to be used to calculate carbon emissions.
You need to scoot closer to the
Oh, sorry. Pretty much it was a presentation by Power a Clean Future Ohio, because they advised the city of Oxford on methodology that they recommended for evaluating carbon emissions. And it was very interesting, and eventually there will be a report issued that summarizes the data from calendar year 2023.
Great. Okay, thank you.
And nothing to report from CIC.
Great, thank you. And then from city staff.
Regarding the Unified Development Code, there is a work group that is just starting to coalesce in responding to the input that we've received through the open houses earlier this year and last fall, that we have partnered with McKenna and Preservation Forward, and staff, as we mentioned last month, is going to be taking over the leadership of guiding that process. And so, as we discussed last meeting, there's going to be a subcommittee or working group of the Planning Commission that is going to be working with City Planner Zachary Moore, who's not able to be here tonight, to provide some guidance for the writing of the code, the updating of the zoning code, subdivision code. And we have not yet had that first meeting of that subcommittee, but will be hopefully later this month. And then I would also add that there are actions to supplement Commissioner Perthrich's comments on parking and transportation and also Planning Commission recommendations. There are a couple of recommendations that have not yet made it to council. One is the floor area that was discussed for Uptown. That amendment has not made it to council yet. That's the ball's in staff's court on that, and we will be bringing that forward. And then there's a recommendation from Parking and Transportation Advisory Board regarding clarifying the role of council in providing exceptions to the Complete Streets policy when there are infrastructure projects, paving projects, those types of things for trying to seek the goals of the 2019 Complete Streets policy. So neither of those two things have made it to council agenda yet, but they are pending. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're to new business. Can I be reminded of the correct terminology I'm supposed to use right now, please? To bring this into public
So you entertain a motion
hearing.
to enter
I would entertain a motion to enter
into public hearing.
into public hearing,
Should
PC.
we do both of these at one time?
That's what we're planning to do.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect, so let's,
Okay.
Yeah.
I am happy to combine these two. So I'm looking for a motion.
I move we enter into public hearing on PC 2025-04, which is zoning map amendment, R2A to R3, as well as PC 2025-05, which is a preliminary and final plan development.
Appreciated. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Good evening, everyone, and sorry for the delay again, but we do have the screen up here, and I'm going to be presenting on behalf of our department. Zachary Moore, city planner, normally does these presentations, but we have the benefit of having the information that he prepared. He's at a conference this week, just left this morning, so I'll be presenting on behalf of the city. This request from architect Scott Webb, and this is a combined presentation because the two are actually intertwined, and that's in relationship to the density or the number of dwelling units that's been requested. So it's a zoning map amendment, or a rezoning is another phrase for that. It is also a preliminary and final plan development. Sometimes we will bring to you preliminary plan developments when it's not known what the complete plan long-term would be. You may remember that for the shooting range property. You might remember that for some other residential developments where it's in phases. But because this is the applicant and the owner have in mind a single phase development, if you will, then there's not necessarily a need to have two separate plan development reviews or preliminary and final. So that's commonly what we do in that circumstance is present both at the same time, which would then allow a recommendation to move on to city council for the complete package. It's also a rezoning or a map amendment because the desired number of dwelling units or another way to look at that would be the density that's allowed in the particular zoning district that it currently has, R2A, is not what is desired by the architect and owner. So their request is to rezone that as well to the next greatest zone. So that's just a little bit of a background before I get into the kind of the location and everything as to why it's a combined presentation and that there are two separate items on the agenda. So it's actually two requests. As I mentioned, Scott Webb, architect, is the applicant. Terry and Kathy Dudley are the owners. And many folks refer to this property as the former nursing home. You may remember it as Premier Health or Premier Nursing a few years ago. It's been vacant for some time. Mr. Dudley acquired this property, and the plans are to convert it from what was a nursing facility to single-bedroom apartments primarily, specifically targeting the senior housing market. There would be I believe, 7 two-bedroom apartments with that, and that would be a total of 44 dwelling units or apartments in this completely connected building. So this is one way to look at it would be a reuse or an adaptive reuse of an existing building on the property. Current zoning is R2A, which is a single and two-family residential district. So you might ask yourselves, well, how could this be a multifamily building in a single and two-family district, which that is actually allowed only under the plan development process. The rezoning request would then allow a multifamily use by right, but because of the way the project is designed and the number of dwelling units would be more than the 24 that are allowed in a single building for multifamily. A plan development is required, and that's actually a common type of application that we've seen in the past few years to creatively use a piece of property or adaptive reuse in order to utilize the infrastructure in the building that's already on the property. The site location, which I think everyone is probably familiar with. If you're familiar with the location just west of what we consider the Tri, the Parks and Recreation office and the fields there, just to the west of that up the hill is where the property is. It's really fully built out already. It's almost 3 acres, taking out the right-of-way, so 2.7 acres. You can see on the aerial photo there with the highlighted property to the south, another senior housing project, Taliford Manor, and then to the west, Oxford View condominiums, and then Verica Farms on farther to the west, and then to the north across Fairfield Road, single-family detached residential, primarily there on the north side of Fairfield. The land use, not the zoning, but the land use, as you may recall, we have the two kind of mapped differently. Sometimes the land uses and the zoning are not exactly in alignment, but it gives you an idea of what is there. Multifamily to the west and south, and then single family surrounding that, and then a park use to the east. And then our future land use, our comprehensive plan, or future land use map, you may recall from the 2023 comprehensive plan, shows this subject property in the area to the west as a transitional suburban neighborhood, which covers a little bit more broad range of building types than the suburban neighborhood, and then preserves and green space as the current use to the east. And this is what we also refer to sometimes in common terms as kind of the vision for the future of the community, this particular map. And then the current zoning, as I mentioned earlier, is the R2A, which is the single and two family. And then to the west and to the north, the R1A, which is single family only. All of these residential zones actually allow multifamily in them under the current zoning, which can be done only through a plan development process. And so that's what you have. And what that allows to be done is for there to be a public hearing, notice to property owners within 200 feet, a sign placed on the property, and that allows the stakeholders, community members to comment, provide any input on what potential mitigation might be needed to make the project happen harmoniously with the surrounding area and the community at large. And proposed zoning would change just the subject property to the R3, which, as I'll discuss further, does increase the potential number of dwelling units per acre, which would be closer to that target that the applicant would like to have to utilize the building in its current form. Here's some photos of the property as viewed from Fairfield Road. May be familiar with that entrance there on Fairfield Road, the parking lot entrance, and you'll see on the site plan that there's another entrance proposed as well, and a few more parking spaces there in the front of the building. But the plan is to kind of keep the surrounding green space around the perimeter of the property pretty much like you see it now, and there would be some additional walkways added. And then internal to the site, photographs there as well to the existing building. It's a brick one-story building that's existing, and their plan is to reuse that with some significant modifications. And bird's eye view, this would be looking west, just another kind of view of the same thing we've already seen there, a little bit closer up. And you can kind of see along the east and south the existing parking that's already in place, and their plan is to take advantage of that and utilize that. Just a top-down view, recent aerophotography, and you can see we have drawn in the right-of-way line. It's very common for these older parcels to show the boundaries going out into the road center line because of just the historical ownership of the land. And over time, road right-of-ways and easements were taken for the use and improvement of the road as a public road, even though the historical parcel does go out into the center line. So it's just a clarification. And that is important when we are talking about the calculation of dwelling units, because we're not talking about the right-of-way, we're talking about the privately owned portion, to make sure that we have the correct number of square footage when we're using those calculations. This is just another viewpoint of showing kind of the building footprint. We call it a stylized image, but this was something that was generated using some geoprocessing of satellite imagery a few years ago, and we have taken advantage of these in order to give a little cleaner look. But you can see kind of those existing. There is an interior courtyard that the plan is to utilize that and keep that in place. And you'll see how this will change with proposed changes in curb cuts and walkways to benefit the future tenants. And so you can see, flipping back between the two, how, and I'll just flip back and forth for your benefit there, you can kind of see the proposed and this parking along Fairfield Road, and the stylized showing the no parking there in that particular area, and how the walkways changed in the courtyard. Because their plan is to take what was interior access rooms for the nursing facility and remove those hallways, and then add exterior doors to the building on all the sides for access to apartments, and those central hallways would then go away. And redevelopment just shows where those portions of the building footprint would be changing. The roofs would still be connected so that those would be covered walkways, and then there would be some open air areas that would result. Mr. Webb, of course, will have more details when he shares his slides, which I'll have here too. This is one of the excerpts from his drawings, and you can see how what currently is essentially just windowed walls. There would be doors added, and so that there could be access directly to the courtyard, and those would be the entrances for those apartments. And then a one-way only drive, because of the newly created doors that they would like to have for this planned development. This would give access for parking spaces for the entry points to those newly created doorways and entryways into those apartments. This just gives you a breakdown of what those divisions look like, and you can kind of see the green highlight where the 2-bedroom units would be. We did talk with Mr. Webb off and on about, in order to kind of avoid the rezoning request, one way would be to remove some parts of the building, or to have 1-bedroom only, but they felt strongly about utilizing kind of the way the building was already divided to take advantage of the footprint and maybe have a few of those larger apartments. And that, while that would utilize more of the building and not require as much modification, it does increase that unit count and kick it up into beyond what the R2A zoning district allows, which is why we have both requests on the agenda tonight. Landscaping, you can see quite a few new trees to be added as part of the project along the south property line, several in the front, which is a standard requirement that we have in the code. And also along the west property line, there's actually, I believe, 3 dead trees there now, and those would be, our recommendation is to remove those and put in new ones there. And then you can see maintaining that green space in the center. But this lot coverage is beyond of what the current code already allows, but it's essentially maintaining pretty similar footprint to what's already there. There was actually a BZA case about that because of an addition in the past that raised it to 66%. Our recommendation is 70% to capture all of those changes as within, and that is a waiver that is allowed by Planning Commission. Of course, that does not circumvent any of the requirements for stormwater. That all has to be managed so that the rate of runoff does not increase any more than what the current rate of runoff is. And you can see what I just mentioned there about the dead trees that would be replaced, which is what our recommendation is, and then the new trees along the south property line. We're also recommending replacing some curb stops with actual fixed curb for a cleaner look there. And that there is a curb requirement in the code for parking lots anyway. Of course, with this being an existing facility, there is some give and take that you can have, because it's not a completely brand new start. They're using what's already there, but in this case, we felt like that was something that could be done within reason to add a fixed curb along that property line, along the edge of the parking lot there. There is some curb in other places. Getting back to the density, since this is also a map amendment request, the current zoning, you see at the top there, R2A, without a zone change, would allow up to 34 units, only with the planned development, which you also have requested tonight. The R3 zoning would allow up to 42 units with the planned development. And then the reason we put in the congregate housing here is because that is somewhat analogous to the intent of the property owners to have senior housing. And our code does not have a lot of details on what that means. So we think the spirit and intent of the zoning code for that is still met. And there is up to 42 units possible, but it would need a waiver for more. And if you've been on the commission for any length, you may have heard this come up in the past. We have primarily been, when that comes up, what we're primarily looking at are higher occupancy density projects where you have multiple bedroom units. So the overall occupancy would be higher. But because these are one bedroom apartments, the effective impact is actually a lot less. So in this case, we believe waiving that requirement to stay under the 42 units is within the spirit and intent of the zoning code, which is what is mentioned right there. Comprehensive plan goals, don't want to miss an opportunity to touch on that. And utilizing the assets that are already there. These are all referenced out of our housing chapter, as you may recall. If you looked at the plan, especially those of you that have been on the commission for a little while, the housing was a big part of the community's desire and vision for the future. And of course, that has been one of City Council's goals for previous years, even prior to that adoption of the 2023 comprehensive plan. And so we did want to highlight those. There was a study done on housing needs, as you recall, Ms. Rosenberg, with the Housing Advisory Commission back in, maybe even back to 2020, when we did that study on the need for the number of housing units in the community, especially at that point, the 1,000 and below rental market per month. Also a high need for affordable for purchase housing as well. So we did want to mention that. Exploring ways to incentivize the creation and maintenance of housing types and arrangements that fulfill community needs. Even prior to that housing study, senior housing that was market rate or more affordable than what we already had in the community was something that was high desire in the community. And that's reflected in these goals from the comprehensive plan. So I'm kind of flipping back and forth between plan development and zoning map amendment. You may recall that there are 4 decision criteria in order to review and recommend to City Council when you have a map amendment in front of you. Actually, only one of these would need to be confirmed. We believe that 3 of them are in compliance or consistent, and those bottom 3, it's very common that that first one is not even applicable, because at this point we have pretty accurate technology in defining the boundaries of the zoning districts. We usually don't come across an error. So, but the other 3, conformance to the comprehensive plan, substantial changes in area conditions, and then legitimate need. We believe that all of those have been demonstrated So we are making a recommendation, and before I make the recommendation, I want to back up and say that we have had a couple of inquiries in response to the public notice, the sign, just asking about the project. Haven't had any real strong opposition, more just questions about, is this, what type of housing is this, and what are how is the building going to change, those types of things. Mr. Moore did have a kind of a walk-in meeting with someone, which is in the report, I believe, just last week, and I think we may have had one phone call, but overall really haven't had a whole lot of calls and questions about this. So getting back to staff recommendation, we've grouped these into conditions and waivers, and we've put our recommendation for both requests into one list. And so I'll go through the conditions first. The 1 year time limit for the validity of the plan development is what's already in the code. Our recommendation is to extend that, which would give a little bit more flexibility. And that's not that uncommon to need a little bit more time. But some kind of limit is still a good idea. Years past, there were no limits on some of these discretionary approvals, and we don't think that's a good idea because then as code changes, there could be kind of an unending approval. The reversion back to R2A zoning, we believe would be a good safeguard for the neighborhood, because if it's zoned R3, if the zone is changed, that's a multifamily zoning district, and that would essentially mean that a planned development may not be required for a development in the future. So because the two requests are tied together and the applicant feels strongly about moving forward with this project, we believe that kind of verifying or validating that with a restriction that would tie the rezoning to the planned development, and they are actually okay with that restriction, then that would give some comfort to the neighborhood and to the community that the rezoning is for this project, not for something else that we don't know about in the future. So if the planned development were to expire, in other words, if they did not get a building permit and move forward with the project, then after that time period, it would revert back to the R2A. Of course, as you all know, we are in the process of rewriting the zoning code, so it would maybe be some different name, but the rights and the allowances would be similar under maybe a new name for a zoning district. Of course, new curbs along the east side of the parking lot, as I mentioned. There are exterior lights on the building that we are recommending having some cutoff shields on those for protection for the surrounding property owners. Landscaping plan, including the replacement of dead trees. Of course, many of these things we would have more details with an actual building permit application, but we have a general idea at this point. And then civil plans, which typically come from an engineering firm, would be required as well. Waivers. Talking with Mr. Webb, Mr. Webb felt like having a kind of a self-imposed restriction of the 55 and over age group would be fine with his client. So our belief was we can just make that a deed restriction. And so you'll see in the recommendation that deed restriction would be something that we would review the wording of and with our attorney to make sure it is something that makes sense in the future as part of in the title record. But again, that it's not something that the city is demanding. It's something that the applicant and the owner believe is the right thing to do as far as just demonstrating their intent and putting that in writing in the deed record. You may recall, those of you that have been on the commission for a little while, we have this principal entrance requirement which has been debated off and on for years, that when a building is being built, the door needs to be facing the street or be visible from the street so it can be found. And so this property, if you recall, has the interior courtyard, and so some of those units would not have their entry facing the street, and so that would need to be a waiver. The front yard coverage, because of the addition of the parking spaces, that would exceed that 25%. That's primarily a requirement for single and two-family residential, but also some other residential properties where you want to maintain kind of that green space along the front. So that's where that's coming from. There is a requirement for all planned developments to have a 25-foot perimeter setback. This is an existing property that already does not comply with that. So because of this review, there would need to be a waiver on that unless they were going to be removing portions of the parking lot. And then lot coverage, as I mentioned earlier, is 40% is what the requirement is, and 66% was previously authorized. There are, I don't know if I could point them out right in front of you right this minute, but there are some increases that are in the single digits that would increase that up to 70% to make the property work like it is. So that's our recommendation. I know that's a lot of information. Answer any questions you might have, and then Mr. Webb has some slides as well, and then you may have some public input.
Sure. Did you have a question?
No, I think you answered everything that was on my mind, so thank you.
Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
You are welcome. I'll pull up Mr. Webb's slides here if you.
And then we're ready for the applicant in just a second. Good to see you, Mr. Webb.
Good evening, thank you.
All
Well,
right.
I guess I'll just kick this off here. So, as always, staff's done a very thorough job and have been honestly very helpful. We've had a lot of back and forth over the last couple of months here trying to figure out the best way to get this done, and we're happy to finally be here tonight with something I think that we have staff's support on, and look for your support here as well. So, some of this will be a little redundant. The zoning map amendment, I think, I won't delve into this, but what it comes down to is density, and I'll show you how that works and why that was important to us. But we do feel that, the current zoning does limit the density and really would prescribe how this building could be renovated and maybe create a product that we're not really, we don't think is really right for the market. So, kind of looking at it overall, we also think that this is an ideal location for independent senior housing with the condominiums, Taliford, just proximity to the senior center. Kroger is just on the edge of the map there, or at least the banks behind Kroger on the edge of the map there. So, it's definitely pedestrian friendly, recreational services, everything sort of in the area. So the existing site, I'm sure everyone's familiar with it at this point. It is a much bigger building than you have any idea. This is 37,000 square feet. To give you an example, CVS is 10. So this is 3.5, almost 4 CVSs. There's a lot of square footage here. And a lot of it's hidden back here in the back along the border to the Oxford condominiums there. And it has this courtyard in the center. It's never presented itself all that well to Fairfield. So, part of our design here is to try to kind of make this fit a little more into the community with some work being done on this side. This were the last group of additions in 2004 where they did new entry, new common space, the drop-off area, handicap ramps. One of the reasons that this makes an ideal adaptive reuse for senior housing is that as a nursing home, it is 100% accessible. There's ramps and everything is accessible from everywhere. The building is fully fire suppressed, so we're really pretty far ahead of the game here for what we're looking to do. As we get around to the back side of the building is brick on every face. A few bricks over the years, some different choices there. It's likely that we'll end up coming up with a painted solution for this somehow to try to tie it all together. We're going to be cutting into some of the brick, as I'll show you here in a little bit. But it's pretty typical. The slide in the top right, you can see it has some coin corners, some nice brick detail in there. You can also see it's in a pretty rough state at this point. Soffits, gutters, lots of problems in the building that we're anxious to get taken care of. The slide there on the bottom right kind of shows you that in addition to the trees, some of which are dead, we've also got about 7 or 8 foot of grade there to create a little buffer to our neighbors to the west also. And then there's the courtyard. So it's really pretty large in there. Again, all the faces are brick. As a nursing home, this was designed so that you can't get outside from the courtyard. They don't want any runaways. And so that really creates a problem for the adaptive reuse for us here in that, we have a lot of corners, we have a lot of knuckles that can't have windows, can't have perimeters. It's hard to get anywhere to do something. But overall, like I said, the building's in decent shape, and I think we have something to work with. So how this design came about is the top left kind of shows you how the building is currently arranged. It was a simple center corridor building, patient rooms on either side, and then the patient rooms back up to one another with a water wall. So they kind of mirror as they go down the way there. Up on the top right, you can kind of see how that works. The green is the corridor. None of these rooms had showers. Each of the rooms had a toilet and a sink only. And so obviously to turn these into apartments, we have some work to do, but the idea is to sort of maintain the water wall in its place. Everything's under the slab currently. And so what we're doing then is what happens there on the bottom left, we'll take the corridor out, we'll take the 2 units that are across the hall from each other, combine them into a single unit, and then lastly, add some doors down there to the front side. And then finally, as this slide on the bottom corner shows, add a little entry porch so everyone has a little covered porch to get in and feel more of a sense of place. So that's kind of where the design came from. So then as we look at the big picture here, I got a lot of water walls and a lot of rooms here to accommodate. So that's where our unit count starts to come from. One of the things that we are trying to work with here, this parking is great, it's here, it's existing, it's about as much as we need. It's not really easy to get to from a lot of different places. I don't really have a pointer here. Oh, I kind of do. So to start with, in order to get into the courtyard, we're talking about taking off a big piece of the building right through here. That would allow people to park in here and access these units along the back with all of their entrances kind of facing this direction. These units then would also face that with their entrances, porches going this direction. But there are units that are sort of buried here in the center that will, both on this side and on this side, only have access from the courtyard. So in addition to this entrance cutting through, we're going to start with this porch here on this front and take out a piece of building through there and through here. That way, our pedestrians, if you park out front, you can get in and get through the corridor. If you park here, we have handicap ramps that can get you in to the central courtyard. It all kind of works. The other reason for doing this is, as I mentioned before, residences require perimeter because we require both entrances and egress windows for every bedroom. So if this were all solid, we just simply couldn't do much with it. So this kind of serves a couple purposes. By cutting this building out here, I have entrances to these apartments kind of in that covered corridor, so to speak, and then it opens them up to have their egress windows and everything else kind of elsewhere. So it helps us to kind of, maximize what we can do with the property. The 2-bedroom units that were mentioned just kind of ended up in places where the pattern broke when the building was built. Over in this area, we have a big laundry and shower room that we're going to tear out. So we ended up kind of making these kind of interlocking 2-bedroom units as a way to kind of reuse that. This down here, we're kind of limited by perimeter. Those ended up being 2-bedroom units, and likewise these here. So it's really a matter of just kind of what the building sort of told us we could do with it, so to speak. So that's kind of how this comes about. Now we'll kind of switch over to the 3D model. This kind of gives you an idea of where we're talking about putting the new entrances to the apartments and how the courtyard and everything works with that. So I talked about how we're gonna cut through the building here and here and here. I also mentioned that the building is fully sprinkled and the sprinkler system is a loop. I can't really dead end it. I really can't cut this whole piece of the building free, because then I'm kind of interrupting my sprinkler system. We're starting all over at that point. So right now, the entire width of this white part kind of would go on and touch that. So we're shrinking it down quite a bit, so it feels more like a gateway, just enough to give us the opportunity to do what we need to do mechanically and get the sprinkler lines from one piece of the building to continue to get around the entire building. So that's kind of what that looks like. And then this slide here kind of shows then sort of from this parking lot, that sidewalk as you walk on in there and see what the corridor is. Kind of looking up at the Fairfield Road side as we are now. If you recall that picture, we have the kind of 2004 edition, a little more contemporary on the front. We have this old gable back here. This wall is all very blank currently. The idea would be to turn those to have some street-facing units out there. Doing that puts them really, really far from the parking. So that's why we thought maybe we would turn that the other direction, make these the most accessible of all units, in that the parking is literally grade level at your front door. We can't do that for every apartment in the development, but we can here perhaps. So that's why we're presenting that. We feel like it does a better job of addressing Fairfield Road as far as looking like a residence and not an institution at some point. We're losing a little green space perhaps, but I think overall it's a big improvement both to the functionality and also to the look of the development. Honestly, when I did this the first time, I had those entrances turned into the courtyard also, and my client very wisely suggested, maybe we ought to think about turning those to the outside, and so we're not just continuing with back of the unit facing the road again, as it has been in the past. So that kind of gives you an idea what that looks like. The courtyard, we're going to maintain, put a new gazebo in there, add some trees, try to keep the ones that are there. Sort of one more view. This is kind of down from here, showing these two end units and what was once just kind of a back-of-house function for the nursing home. So it gives you an idea what all that's going to look like. And then to the decision standards, I agree with staff. I think we meet 3 of the 4 here. The comprehensive plan in particular, when it talks about extending housing options for all life stages, affordability for all income levels, recognizing and supporting senior developments. And I think we're kind of on the right side of things on this one. We do believe that not only has there been a substantial change to the neighborhood in terms of it really doesn't reflect its current zoning, also the fact that that building has been vacant for quite some time. It was, shall we say, underperforming for quite some time before that, as it went through lots of name changes and lots of owners. So I think this is a real opportunity to reinvest in this neighborhood and to do something unique that the comprehensive plan is asking for. Onto the plan development decision standards. We feel that it also meets these. I'm happy to go through them one at a time if you'd like, but I think we all sort of understand what the standards are here. There's 14 of them. So our intention is, as you saw, some early designs looked at sort of a easier way to provide some parking, taking out the 2 big trees on the northeast corner. We decided to leave those and opt for the parking in the other place. So we're going to keep all the trees that are there. I think Sam pointed out that we have new buffers proposed to the south. So I think we're doing our best to meet the intentions of the plan development for buffering, setbacks, parking, all of these kinds of things also. As far as the final goes, you know, I've never done a preliminary and final before. This is kind of a different thing for us, but you know, as we've been working with staff throughout this entire time, I have full confidence that if we need to make a small tweak one way or the other when we dig deeper into this building, you know, we can stay within the guidelines that you will hopefully support and staff will be able to effectuate for you. So, so we'll continue through that. And conditions and waivers, I think Sam pointed out, we are fine with all the conditions and waivers that have been proposed so far. We think that they're fair. And lastly, on the density or unit count, we went back and forth with this a number of times because sometimes our code defines things by units and sometimes it defines things by occupants. And, you know, 42 seems to be the hard number. We're having to change the zoning even to get to 42. And now I'm here asking for even more than that, and that even more than our 110% density bonus or our 10% density bonus that we get for the PUD. And the reason is just simply, you can see we're just trying to reuse as much of the building as we can. And I'm hoping that through a waiver that Planning Commission or at the very least City Council could see the rationale of, you know, what difference does it make if I have 44 one-bedrooms or, you know, 21 two-bedrooms or whatever. I mean, that as staff pointed out, you know, ultimately I think our occupancy is lower than what everyone would fear when we base things on a unit count. So we think it's a reasonable request at this point. Happy to answer any questions you would have.
Thank you. Anybody like to ask anything?
A few. So, I think we all generally know what senior housing is, but in terms of your applicant, how are you defining, is the only definition that any, that you have to be 55 or over, there are other requirements that are being considered?
No, you know, I mean, we have not looked into, Taliford Manor obviously is right next door. That one is income-based. You know, we don't know that we're going to go that direction necessarily. The units are just kind of as they are. One of the things we found through this process is that there's about a 40-person wait list for Taliford. So that's another reason we think this is kind of ideal. So the units are very small. They are, you know, they're 500 or 600 square feet, single bedrooms, small kitchens, laundry in-house. If that is what you would like to live in this kind of community, then that's what's available. There's no other requirements or anything else we could really do to try to attract anyone at this point past that.
And then can you just speak to any shared common spaces or amenities that are part of the plan?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. So, go back. So this blue area here is an area that we just couldn't effectively reuse. It's pretty far up in the air as it hangs out over the hillside down here. Turns out there is a commercial kitchen in place. There's a hood hanging there that hasn't been used in quite some time. At this point, we're not interested in any kind of congregate meal service. That's not really the plan. But at the same time, we don't have another use for that kitchen. We decided, let's just not tear it down. We don't know what the future might bring. But other amenities, obviously we'll have a business office, we'll have some rental offices and things like that in there. But we'd also proposed the idea of some shared amenity space. So like an open office concept that an attorney could come down one day a week and set up shop. We talked about even if somebody wanted to, you know, cut hair or do makeup or, you know, just estate planning, just have some kind of flex space in there. This one room we're going to leave open just for the residents, kind of a community room. So, so whatever will happen on the site is going to be directed specifically toward our residents. We're not trying to run a restaurant out of this kitchen or anything like that. But it is both a, you know, a factor of we got the space that and trying to figure out a reasonable use for it. So, so we don't expect there to be commercially operating businesses there, but hopefully as an amenity to the people, they would at least have some flex space to hold some meetings or have the opportunity to have a consultant come in or something. So.
lastly, is there any storage space for occupants?
No, not on site, no.
So if I could ask a question, and this is about the unit mix, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the engineering of the building, because, maybe I don't understand the concept of the water wall. Are there impediments to creating a greater mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units? Because I'd imagine the market might bear some mixture. And also our code is kind of, the plan development's a goal, but not a criteria of the code, that it facilitate a mixture of dwelling types. So can you talk about, like, why so many 1 bedrooms when you might be able to serve a market with a bigger mix?
Well, I mean, our preliminary research, we feel that the apartments being this small they're kind of geared toward a single person at this point. You know, from a engineering sort of functionality standpoint of it, it's just simply, you know, we kind of mirror buildings. So we have all the plumbing for these 4 units is running in this blue wall. And then another, you know, skip a wall,
Okay.
go plumbing in that wall, then I got another plumbing wall, skip a wall, another one. They just keep mirroring them. And so that's where bathrooms and kitchens will need to be, because our intention is not to go in here and cut up every one of these floors and replumb them in every possible way. We're trying to do this as surgically as possible. And so that's how we ended up with this mix. If we did something different, I mean, it might be possible, like we did on the other spot, to sort of split these, kind of interlock them Ls or something like that might be possible. But it's just a matter of how much perimeter that we end up with and what the rest of the space ends up being. So if I end up giving, you know, I've got plenty of living, bathroom. If I give this 2 bedrooms, I've got all this space for something. You know, to truly give somebody 2 modules, so to speak. So it's just the way the modular of the thing sort of worked out.
Okay. I think that's all I have in the way of questions. We can talk minor detail stuff when we get to that conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
How about you? Got any questions?
Nothing for me.
I don't either. I want to thank you. Oh,
I have a quick question.
absolutely.
Just so I'm clear, all the units will be a landlord-tenant relationship with the seniors living in
Yes.
the residence?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I do have one question further, is that I really, really do appreciate the voluntary consideration of the deed restriction. I think that changes the whole nature of the conversation about this. I guess I'm trying to understand, is that tied to the density bonus, or is that a standalone commitment? You know, and if we talking about 42 versus 44, are you just in general committed to this being a 55-plus community by deed
I
restriction?
mean, that was our charge from the start. I mean, that was the goal, was, you know, it's adjacent to Taliford Manor. We know that there's a specific need. You know, as we looked at the building, it seemed like a relatively easy conversion. I mean, it's big, nothing's easy, but, you know, when we talk about, as we do a lot up here, affordable housing and affordability and things like that, I mean, you know, when you start with a building that has walls and a roof and floors and plumbing and sprinklers and parking in place, that's your best opportunity for having something affordable. And so, you know, that was really the goal here. Since that was our goal from the start, you know, when Zach and I were looking at options for this density question, that's what we came up with. He said, well, you know, you guys are targeting this. Are you willing to commit to it? I was like, sure.
Thank you.
Great. All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And then, is there anyone from the general public? Yeah, come on up. Yep.
Good evening, Kathy Chaffin.
Just one moment. Can you please give me your name and address?
Yes, Kathy Chaffin, 6022 Fairfield Road.
Okay, and then I just want to let you know there is a 3-minute time limit, and please do go ahead.
Well, I will attempt to stay within my 3 minutes then. If not, I will ask for a little bit of variance for that. Tonight, you're considering what has been proposed as senior housing. Let me get this perfectly clear. I am not opposed to senior housing. I firmly believe in senior housing. My mother-in-law lived in subsidized senior housing, so I'm all for this. However, and I believe Mr. Webb just addressed the one statement that I was going to make. If you are going to have affordable senior housing, you must have subsidies or rent caps. There doesn't appear to be any. That is a concern. The median household income in Oxford, Ohio was $42,147. At 50% of the rent, that's $1,258 a month for a two-bedroom. Does it include utilities or not? Do they have electricity or not? Do they have gas service or not? If you are looking at 60% of the rent income for a two-bedroom, that's $1,510 a month. That's not affordable. Now, a 55 and older community is wonderful. Telford is subsidized. That's how they have a waiting list, because the need is here. So if it is going to be a Section 8 or a senior housing or a housing trust fund tax credit housing, absolutely, bravo. That's what we need here. But we do not need high rent senior housing, and that's what this would be. Now, I could go live there because I'm over 55. So as long as I meet the rental requirements, I can go and I can live there. But do all occupants have to be 55 or older? What if my spouse is 25? Not that they would be, but let's say that they are, and we've got kids. We've got a kid. We're in a two-bedroom. What's to stop me from doing that? There's no restrictions. Now, the current zoning code requires certain setbacks and certain requirements for green space. Understand the conditional use when it was a nursing home. However, what green space that there is on Fairfield Road is now be taken away to give 8 more parking spots in the front on Fairfield Road. If you've ever been on Fairfield Road and you're coming down the hill towards Kroger's, that is not a good place to allow the egress and ingress of those particular front-facing apartments. He's taking down a portion of the building. There is a walkway. They can walk to their places if they're capable.
Ma'am,
Now,
just your
if
time?
there are excuse me?
Your time is up.
So do I sit down or can I come back up? Or
You
may
would
I
have
ask
to
for
sit-
additional time?
If you were wrapping it up in the next 20 seconds,
I'm going to need more than 20 seconds. I'm going to need about 2 minutes.
you'll have to sit down. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
I'll make sure.
Good evening. And what's your name and address, sir?
6022 Fairfield. Got it? That's good. You didn't hear me?
I did not. I don't know if it was,
Steve Chaffin, 6022 Fairfield. Okay.
thank you.
So I'll cover some of the points my wife didn't get a chance to make. The first one is the comment from the fire chief. I don't know if you all read that or not, but proposed project would create significant strain on the already taxed fire EMS. You know, you guys, we just had a fire levy increase to try to take care of this problem. Now you want to increase the stress on the fire department there. The income and property tax revenue generated from the property will not cover the increase in calls. You know, we live on Fairfield, there's a lot of traffic on there, this is going to increase that traffic flow. When the nursing home was there, we didn't have the problem. We had a lot of EMS runs, but, and that's nice not to have those in the middle of the night. So we don't, I mean, that's going to happen if this thing is built. But you don't need to rezone this. He can still build, 34 units without a rezoning? I just don't think you should open it up to an R3. There's no other R3s on either side of Fairfield in that neighborhood. The parking thing in the front, I walk on Fairfield Road every day. I walk over to the Tri. The drainage is not good there. He's gonna, if he builds those extra parking spaces, it's gonna impact that drainage. There's a big drainage ditch that goes right there at that spot, and the water goes. But anything south of that, the water flows over to the park. And there's a huge puddle that's created from the asphalt that drains into the park. So it's just going to make that problem worse. You don't have good drainage at the park, so that should be worked on, but you guys don't control that. So anyway, we're against the rezoning, we're against the plan. We think another plan could be developed. They could turn those units back where the entrances would be into the courtyard, make more sense. I think it would be more conducive for people to want to go to the entrance that way instead of on a busy street. But anyway, good luck.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Thank you. Come on up. And please give your name and address.
Patricia Brindle, 6135 Fairfield Road, and I'm the president of the Oxford View condominiums for the Board of Managers. We are agreeing with the need for senior housing, and let's see here. We will certainly support an additional senior housing unit, especially in the proposed area. Our concerns have been and maintain the character of the neighborhood while be irreparable damage by a zoning change that is not narrowly tailored and proposed promoting senior housing. The area is home to the other seniors living space in the, as well as the Oxford Senior Center. In addition, I would like to express strong support in the inclusion of the restricted deed covenant limiting the sale and or occupancy of a property in individuals age 55 and older. It ensures that the development meets a growing and need for the senior-friendly housing options while also minimizing the impact on schools, enrollment, traffic volume, and public infrastructure. We agree that, 44 units would be acceptable, but they have to be 55 and older. Don't want any more student housing out in our community on that west side of Oxford. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Okay,
So I would move that we close public hearing on PC 2025-04 and PC 25-05.
all right, moved. Is there a second? Thank you, all right. Well, then we will,
Vote
All
on
in
it.
favor?
all in favor, say
Aye.
aye.
Okay.
I appreciate you so much, thank you. All right, then we are here.
Yeah, and I think we've changed, so we converse first and then wait for the motion later. Is that how we're doing it?
I think so. Let's just do it
Okay,
that
all
way.
right, sounds
Yes,
good.
so why don't we have some discussion? Who would like to start?
Well, I guess I would. I view this project, I appreciate all the thoroughness that went into the review and clearly the back and forth between the applicant and staff. And I think that, this hits on a lot of the goals while complying with the code. And what that leaves is just some, what to me are relatively minor things to discuss that I think that are primarily covered in the recommendations already. I think that the deed restriction, when I saw, a proposed rezoning of this former nursing home, I said, it's great, but I'm not sure it's not gonna not go the way we don't want. And that's where the deed restriction just changed the nature of the conversation. Because I think we have an evident need for all kinds of housing, but I think senior housing that's not, in a congregate setting for independent people, we just don't have enough of it. So I feel like almost everything has been met as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I do view it, I mean, it isn't upzoning, but I think it reflects the structure that's already there. I think that the density could probably be fulfilled through a conditional use as opposed to a rezoning. And so I do really appreciate the way that the rezoning is tied to the planned development, which is tied to senior housing and is tied to a time frame. So that is way more assurance than typically we kind of have to like buy the pig in the poke. Like you have to rezone and hope. There are a lot of safeguards here. So I'm good with it. My question is really just about the unit mix. You know, I feel like I just know that people go through life course changes. They're in a couple, and then someone passes away. And I think the more mixture of units you have, the more you can maintain a tenant over those changes. And right now, you have a lot of one kind of unit that might be kind of hard for a couple to live in. And so I would like to think that the economics of it could work out equally well if you just had somewhat greater of a mix. I think there's some code support in terms of, our planned development code does have a goal of maintaining a mixture. It's not a hard and fast rule. But to me, I feel like if two of those single-family units were, I'm terrible at math, but if we divided some of those up the way you described, so it created some kind of 1.5 units or something, you could get down to the 42. I think you could charge proportionally for a 2-bedroom unit, and it might work out okay for you economically. And then you just hit on a greater demographic of people, a greater market, and I think that would just be better for the community too. So we could talk about that, but that's one thing that I would really like to see. Some little details, this is my bias. I'm a connectivity guy. I'm thinking about the users of this, and I think it seems to be really well designed. I think the flow is good. You have a sidewalk off of Fairfield, off that new entrance into the courtyard. So my thing is the senior center. I know there's some weird slopes there, but your folks are going to be walking to the senior center. And so I would like to think that, I think there's no way for you to currently, in any ADA accessible way, provide a connectivity to the west that's a really high slope. But I don't know what's the slope like on the southern boundary of the property.
Talford does sit up a little bit higher. It's not quite as dramatic as Oxford.
Can you get a microphone?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sorry, thank you for
So
coming
anyway,
up.
So the bank that I showed you to the Oxford view would be pretty inaccessible.
Yeah.
But it may be a possibility. Turns out that to the south of this property is a utility easement that goes 15 feet. I guess the city owns it. Maybe we could do something to work on putting some kind of a sidewalk down there or something.
Yeah, I was looking on the GIS. There's like an easement. On the GIS, it looks like it belongs to Talford, but maybe it's the easement belongs to the city. I guess to me, it's just a matter of extending one of those sidewalks and point it like a stub. You can't be responsible for any of the connectivity, but I'm thinking about that sidewalk there, if extended to the south or pointed in the direction. And ideally, this is a small town. If you guys could talk to Talford and make a sidewalk connection, then you might have a pedestrian and potentially an ADA, because this is a big property. I mean, a city block in a mile square would probably be smaller than this. And there's not much north-south connectivity between Fairfield and Tollgate. So to me, I think it's a minor thing that if you could at least point a sidewalk, make an extension, and engage in your adjacent property owner, you might really be able to boost the value of this for the residents. And then the last little thing and this is just a bugaboo of mine, is that particularly in this complex, I think you really want to maintain free passage on the sidewalks, because some people may be, I think you're going to be able to market an ADA compliant. The vehicular overhang over sidewalks is just terrible in a community full of pickup trucks. People back their pickup trucks onto the sidewalk and cover 3/5 of the sidewalk. And so there would be some cost entailed, but, you know, what are those sleeper things that are called, the sidewalk?
Parking stop.
The parking stops, you know, I think parking stops adjacent to sidewalks would ensure that you don't have vehicular overhang, and this could be.
We have about 40 of them along the east side that a condition says we have to take out, so we
Okay.
move them to the other side.
Okay, all right. So anyway, that's just something for me. I mean, it's a minor detail. But overall, you know, I think this hits on a lot of goals and it complies with the code, and I really don't have concerns about the rezoning. I partly have a feeling that our overall feeling in the zoning is this is the direction our zoning would go. I'd be really surprised if our rezoning had less density than it currently has, or even equal. So I'll stop with that.
Since you called me back up here, I'll just make the one more point about the number. I mean, we consider that the maximum number. We have some time here. You know, once we start through this process, we can start marketing. You know, we would like to propose that as the max.
Okay.
So we might, in fact, come back from that based on the market research as we get a little farther. You know, we're just asking, you know, don't make us arbitrarily cut the unit count. You know, let us propose what we feel we can fit in the building. If we end up switching out some one bedrooms for two bedrooms, we're only gonna take that down.
Okay. So while I have the mic also, I wanted to address
Wait.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The Chaffins were here, and they had a point that I was going to address that I forgot.
About the drainage?
About the drainage, no. Anyway, I'll come back to it. I do want to encourage you to maintain the common area and kitchen is common and not try to think about another use. I mean, I know that people who move into these units, they're typically good for them, but not for when their family comes to visit. So I think that having a communal space is a really attractive feature for an older person who's living in a small one-bedroom, that you can host your family for a big party. And I think it will make your small units more appealing to person downscaling from a condo, you know, because they'll still be able to host. So I would think about really like maintaining that for the use of the. My point with the Chaffins is I really, really, really sympathize with their concern about affordability. But what I would say legally, as far as our code is written in 2025, there's no teeth to the code to requiring affordability. And some of the things they're talking about are wonderful. I think our new code will probably have some requirements in there, set-asides or things like that. Our code just currently doesn't. So it's a wish, but not a legally binding thing that we can impose on this. So I'll stop with that.
Okay, thank you. Did you?
Yeah, I agree with just about all of that. I was, if I could call you back up, if that's okay. We don't usually do this, but on
In
occasion.
fact, how about this? If anyone has questions for Mr. Webb after Counselor Bracken is done, we're going to leave him up until we're done, okay? Thank you.
Yeah. Do you feel pretty confident you can handle the drainage with the northern little parking lot loop?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of baked into our code, and, you know, and from a redundant standpoint, we've also made it a condition. I mean, we're changing, we're adding roof, we're adding gutter, we're adding paving. Stormwater will have to be reevaluated for its entirety for the site. And to the Chaffin's point, that is kind of an awkward little wet spot down there. There is a random catch basin that will likely have to be reconfigured in some fashion in order to do that. That may end up being the solution. You know, like we've done many times before, we can store stormwater in a pipe under the new parking lot and release it slowly, you know, down toward the other end. So the parking lot may be the solution to that wet spot as we're at it. And yes, we will absolutely have to put stormwater on the table for the entire site.
Yeah, I know it's written in. I was just wondering what your thoughts on how effective that would be,
Yeah,
but
we can do it.
cool. And just to stress, I pretty much agreed with just about everything you said, but especially a connection to Oxford seniors would be great. That's all.
Did either of you two have any questions for Mr. Webb? Before,
think
that you didn't have before during the?
Yes,
application?
I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but the roof lines of the existing building are going to be the same, and you'll add new roofs, but,
Yeah.
yeah, right? Okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna add those little porch
Yeah.
roofs, little.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much again, Mr. Webb. Okay. And did you have more to say after?
Nope.
All right, and
Yes, so I am in support of this project for many of the reasons that have already been stated. The one thing that I think is, kind of obvious but worth underlining is that this is a vacant property that is being redeveloped for a need that we've identified in the comprehensive plan, which is wonderful. I mean, it's not like we're changing the zoning radically. We're taking a building that was designed for seniors, changing it up and reactivating it, which I think is like, a great thing to be doing, while meeting needs that we've articulated in the comprehensive plan. So I'm all for it. I mean, as from an architectural point of view, I'm a little concerned about how teeny these apartments are, but it's not my you guys have to figure out how to sell it, market it. But I think it's a very sensible reuse of this existing building, so very good.
I'll echo just a lot of the points that have been made. Location-wise is fantastic. It's walkable to Kroger, to shopping, to all these amenities that would be very useful for people who might live here. And from a sustainability perspective, the greenest building is the one that already exists. So I think that's it's really great to have that. And I think there's some sort of thoughtful, precise design moves that will also help keep it sort of sustainable as well, and sort of have a minimal kind of impact in terms of the material use. So I think my biggest concern is perhaps just the addition of the 2 curb cuts along Fairfield. I mean, I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I'd just be concerned about the increase in traffic and watching for kind of blind spots of pedestrians, those kinds of things.
And is there a traffic study being done right?
At this point, one is not being required.
Okay.
The city engineer can require a traffic study. Typically, residential uses don't generate that much of a traffic impact, so I'd be doubtful that city engineer would require one. If it was a commercial use that had peak times for open and close and shift changes, those types of things, that might be more common. But no, the city engineer can require one, and if that happens, and if the traffic study from a registered engineer shows that there's a threshold that's been hit, then sometimes there are improvements that are required. Turn lanes or signalization or some type of,
Right.
I don't see that would be the case. but
Yeah,
that'd
I
be up
mean,
to
I
city
know where
engineer.
this is, so just wondering if,
That's what I was gonna say. I can't imagine. That is a small lot. It is a straight, flat, you can see way up the road. Like, I can't imagine that's gonna be an issue. Just throwing that out there.
And
Yeah,
if there are
I just
issues
wanted
with
to-
speed, they're more the city's problem of trying to manage it through traffic calming than trying to like limit curb cuts. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah, it's a wide roadway, so I think that's why there is speed control challenges there, because the lanes are so wide and no one parks on the street hardly, that there are some speeding issues through there.
I'd imagine that, but at least you can see
Yeah.
her a long way before
Yeah.
running into anybody.
so I guess I have a question. I think all the standards are really great, and some of those things, like some of the things I'm talking about don't necessarily need, I mean, the conditions are all great, but I guess the question is whether some of the things that I'm talking about should be conditions or not. Like, I don't think the curb stops, I mean, that's the kind of thing I think that staff would work with. But I think about that arrangement of like, if you took 2 single units, you could create 4 2-bedrooms, right? Am I correct on doing the math the way you were kind of subdividing them? I mean, I might feel comfortable, it means we're not waiving the density. Instead of 44, we're down to 42, which is 100% like by right. And then I also just feel better about the marketability of it. And so I'm not sure that, I guess whether other people feel like that would be a condition, And it could also be that just that's a desire, and let's see what you come up with by council. Those are a couple different options.
So that kind of brings me to what I was going to talk about. Obviously, I echo a lot of what you guys have been saying. I've been, trying to see affordable housing just like this happen for so long. And so I do want to say something about the composition of the apartments. I know it feels hard to imagine, but I just know many seniors in this town who are single individuals in market rate apartments, like on Fox and Hounds, or in, the one on Village West, right? And they're in these market rate apartments that are, that they can't really afford. And to have what I imagine is going to be affordable, for the reason that Mr. Webb said, that this is going to be creating a building out of an existing building. So it's not going to cost as much. So I just know that there's such a great need for, are pets going to be allowed? Pets? So what I would actually, I understand, but what I would actually say, for instance, is to consider a very permissive policy on emotional support animals and having pets, because I think you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of folks that, need to have this less expensive, modest housing, and they very well may need to be able to have an animal with them. And another thing I did notice was, and it's really just to repeat some of what's already been said, the walkability of this entire property, including to all the different sidewalks going to all the different places, senior center, Kroger. I just find it like so important to have that available, including for wheelchair access, of course, but considering that kind of access to adjacent properties and sidewalks. And that was all I had to say. Is there any?
I was gonna say I wouldn't be in favor of making it a condition, even if I think that might be a good thing. I'd rather leave it up to them to figure it out. And I do think there is plenty of people who live singly that this could benefit.
Is there anything further?
So it sounds like we're ready for a motion.
It sounds like we're ready for a motion. Would anyone like to make the motion with all of the, we should go through the decision criteria.
Motions, because they're legally two different
We need to.
processes, right? So,
I would agree.
okay, so we'll do this in turn, and so I move approval of PC 2025-04, which is to amend our current zoning from R2A to R3.
And would you suggest we go through the decision standards, Sam, or?
You can either do that, or you can adopt the staff findings.
Okay,
Either one's fine.
yeah.
So I would make that motion while adopting the staff findings of fact and with accepting the conditions as articulated in the staff report.
Second.
All right, so we have
So this is the rezoning part.
this is the rezoning part. We do a roll call vote.
Sure, yeah. I'll start with Mr. Kruth,
Yes.
Ms. Webster,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Okay, so, and they're separate, but they are linked to each other. So just let the record reflect that they are separate things, but PC 2025-04 is premised on PC 2025-05 moving forward. So I'm going to move approval of PC 2025-05, which is a combined preliminary and final plan development. Again, accepting the staff findings of fact and their recommendations and attached conditions.
Second.
Okay, and then to a roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Kruth again,
Yes.
Ms. Webster,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Is that right?
All right. Excellent work, everyone.
So is
Thank
that's it-
you.
That's it, right?
That's it.
So I would move, we adjourn?
Second?
All right. Well, then we are adjourning this. All in
All in
favor,
favor.
say aye. Aye. Now I get to close the meeting.
Nicely done.
Where's the gavel?